All right, welcome back. It is the start of a new session in Ottawa today. Very busy day. It's the House of Commons. Everybody gets back to work and work gets underway. And there is so much that is going to be discussed in this particular session that we thought we would check in with James Moore, the senior Conservative MP here in British Columbia. Thanks for being with us. I know, tough day today.
No, not a tough day.
Well, I meant like tough, schedule-wise tough day today.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Good to be with you.
All right. Thanks for having us here. Now, let's talk about what's coming up. I know the number one question for people ever since the Prime Minister announced it last week is the change to pensions. I've gotten a lot of emails and phone calls from people who are concerned about this.
Naturally, I mean, people are, we look to our sunset years and we want to make sure that we have stability and a predictable outcome, a predictable source of revenue. And that's actually what the conversation is about that we're trying to have. There's nobody who is currently retired, nobody who is retiring in the near years or quite frankly, for quite some time, and by quite some time I mean many years, who has certainly anything to have to readjust in terms of their personal portfolio and considerations for their retirement years, where this is about protecting people's retirement income and ensuring that Canada's social system that is there to protect people in their sunset years is there not only for the current generation of retirees or those who are about to retire, but for people who are my age. I'm 36, and all of us need to start thinking about the years ahead. And so this is about making sure that our system is there and the pension structure of our system is in great shape for all Canadians for the years to come.
Well, you brought yourself up, so I have to get into this because the other question that I've gotten from people is that if you're going to be reforming the general public's pensions, then what are you going to do about MPs' pensions, because they have the best pensions out there?
That'll be a topic as well, and we are going to be reforming NP pensions. As a matter of fact, we're going to be looking at options very soon. I can tell you by very soon, I mean in the coming few days, about the way ahead and to make sure that NP pensions are certainly much more in line with the rest of the general federal civil service and to bring them much more in line. I mean, as I said, I'm 36. So the NP pension is something that's not in my near future, but certainly I think there's an expectation amongst Canadians that members of Parliament need to have a better understanding of the anxieties that all of the public has when it comes to their retirement years.
So you can say that definitively, that you're going to be level that playing field for MPs as well as the general public?
Yeah, we are going to be reforming the system because as you said, I think there's just a basic question there of fairness, that if members of Parliament are going to be addressing the pension issue for the broader public service, the public service has to include politicians as well.
Now, Mr. Moore, can I ask, why didn't any of this come up during the election? I mean, if your government intended to make these kinds of changes and have these discussions with the Canadian public, why not bring it up during the election and campaign on it?
Well, I mean, we could have campaigned on MP pensions and beaten ourselves up. I mean, there are a number of subjects that don't get touched on in an election campaign, but I don't agree specifically that the issue of retirement security is something that we didn't bring up. When we talk about the economy, we always talk about making sure that Canadians' retirement years are safe and solvent, that we have the kind of protection that people are hoping for their retirement years. I think that very much was. I mean, I remember going to seniors' homes in my district and talking to seniors all the time during the campaign, and people wanted to make sure that our system was solvent and strong and on good footing for future generations. That's very much part of what our government has talked about for a very long time. So this is about starting a conversation. This is not about springing in policy on Canadians unexpectedly. This is the start of a much bigger conversation about making sure that retirement is something that'll be a reality for as many Canadians as possible, not as few. And also, something to keep in mind as well. Mark Carney, the head of the Governor of the Bank of Canada, gave a speech a couple weeks ago in Toronto, and he noted that Canadians have an average household debt 13% higher than a typical American family. So Canadians' household debt is high, which will impact our retirement years. So the whole concept of income security, ensuring that we have the kind of system in place and the kind of policies in place that will protect Canadians' retirement, lower that family debt, make sure that we have healthy policies for retirement years for all Canadians is something that's very critical to the long-term economic health of the country.
All right, so what else are we going to be hearing about then in this session?
Well, copyright reform is my personal legislative need, then my responsibility as Minister of Heritage to ensure that those who are investing thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars into building software, into film and television and music entrepreneurs in the cultural sector, that they are protected from those who would steal from them, whether you're stealing from somebody using a keyboard or using a crowbar. Stealing is stealing, and we want to make sure that those who are investing into the information technology sector in our country, that their investments are protected. That's important. We have a budget coming down, an overall budget in early March. That'll signal a lot of the policy changes that our government has in mind as we drive towards a balanced budget in 2016, and also looking at initiatives across the country that will continue to spur economic growth and jobs. We have, as you know, we invested $8 billion into the province of British Columbia to ensure that we have a healthy shipbuilding industry in the province of BC, and that we have icebreakers for the north and new Coast Guard vessels and new science vessel for the Department of Natural Resources and Environment Canada. So a lot of investments, responsible management, good government is what I think Canadians wanted and elected, and we plan to deliver that in this session.
Are we going to be hearing about the end of the gun registry in this session?
I'm glad you raised that. Yes, indeed. And certainly a subject that has been a sore spot for a lot of particularly Western Canadians who have been frustrated for a long time that millions of dollars every year gets wasted on a gun registry that frankly doesn't work. Premiers from across the country have called for the end of the long gun registry. Canadians have expected that for a long time, and now that we have a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, we can pass the bill, we can get it done, and the gun registry will be gone.
Can we say it doesn't work, though, when we hear from so many police chiefs who say it does work and they want to keep it?
Well, some do, some don't. I can tell you the police chiefs, in Port Moody have said that it doesn't work and they don't want it. Police chiefs across the country are not unanimous in their view. As a matter of fact, when the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police have had their votes in the past, it has almost been split down the room. It's certainly not a unanimous view. But the question is cost versus benefit, and also, in my judgment, the logic of it. We've been very clear for years that we just don't think that criminals register their guns, that it doesn't make sense, that it's illogical. But if a police officer uses the CPIC, the Canadian Police Information computer, to look for data on somebody who they pulled over to the side of the road, and somebody would say, well, then they've accessed the gun registry. Well, that's not quite true. Illegal guns are not being registered. Criminals do not use the long gun registry. It doesn't work. The kind of guns that are actually causing crimes on the street are not those that are being registered in the long gun registry database. It doesn't make sense. It's illogical, and it's wasting money, and it's taking focus away from what we really should be focusing on, which is those who are illegally trafficking in guns and who are career criminals, and that's where the focus of our justice system should be, not those who are law-abiding citizens who would line up to actually register their weapons. Those are not the people or the weapons we need to be worried about. Do
you still maintain that the data that has been gathered is going to be destroyed as well?
Of course, because you can't get rid of the registry without actually getting rid of the registry, number one.
Hasn't Quebec said they want to keep that? I mean, there are provinces who say they want that information.
Yeah, but I don't think Albertans and British Columbians and Manitobans who want other levels of government that they haven't elected having their personal private information, number one. Number two, there's a question of privacy. Three, when people have given their information to the Government of Canada on the auspices of having a long gun registry, when the registry is gone, the Government of Canada can't use that information for other purposes. And number four, you can't get rid of the registry without actually getting rid of the registry. That's what this information is. Now, if other levels of government have other designs for their justice system, that's their choice. But our commitment to Canadians is clear. You can't get rid of the registry without actually getting rid of the registry. And to use that information and to pass it to other levels of government would be dishonest, and we can't do that. And we have to protect people's privacy.
And just to get back to, you mentioned about the budget too, are we going to see spending cuts in that budget?
Indeed. This is something we talked about in the last campaign, and we talked about all of last year. We've engaged every single federal department, Crown corporations, agencies, and we've said that they have to find 5 to 10% of their budgets to cut. Now, 5 to 10% cut in any organization is certainly something that can be handled. This is not, by the way, like an across-the-board 25, 30% cut like we've seen in other jurisdictions in the United States and parts of Europe. The UK, for example, where they just did 25 and 30% cuts across the board. We're going to organizations, asking them to find 5 and 10% cuts that make the most sense for their organizations and finding long-term savings for taxpayers. We've said we won't cut health care, and we're not. We said that we won't cut transfers to veterans and transfers to the disabled and to those who are the most vulnerable in our society, and we're not. We're safeguarding all of that. But we have said that we will find efficiencies elsewhere in government so that we can drive to a balanced budget. The best way to ensure that all of Canada's economy moves forward is to make sure that we're creating jobs, we have a competitive economy, and by the way, we are there. We're leading the G7 in economic growth. We're leading the G7 in job creation. We're leading the G7 in all the key indicators, and Forbes magazine said that the Canadian economy is the best economy in which to invest and do business. So we're making the right choices, but we're doing so prudently and methodically, and not doing it in any kind of a haphazard way that would cause the kind of instability that is leading to the problems that we see in Europe.
All right, we're all out of time, but thank you very much for joining us today.
pleasure's mine.
That is James Moore, the senior Conservative MP for British Columbia, talking about the government's upcoming agenda for this session. We're going to talk more about that when we come back.